Can I introduce Gerwin Vries, Director of Flux Landscape Architects, and he's going to take us on a whirling journey through some new projects he's been speculating on this idea of forest and city. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully the mic is working. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gerwin Vries. I'm owner and landscape architect at Flux Landscape Architecture. I will show you some projects that we're doing, and specifically on the topic of forest. And the second part of my lecture is about urban forest. Let me see. Okay. This is Flux. It's situated in Utrecht. We are Office for Landscape Architecture. We have a team of around 25 people, which are landscape architects, urban designers, people from Delft, but also Wageningen or art school, like a mix of people. This is our workspace, and we work on projects which have a big variety in scale. From very small scale, like it could be a roof garden or a design of a public space or a park, to city scale, landscape scale, and also design research. And mostly this design research we start ourselves. And one of the researches we started 2 or 3 years ago was research on new forest in the Netherlands. We call this research Woodlands, which is linked to the name Woodland, which comes from bold, wood, forest. So that was we found it very interesting because there's not that much wood or forest in the Netherlands. And the research started because we saw in the news, but also some politicians saying we should have 2 million bomen or 100,000 hectares of forest in the Netherlands. All of these very wild plans to plant a lot of trees and a lot of new forests in the Netherlands. And when we try to find where this forest should be, we could only find these very abstract maps with some circles on it. So there were not really plans for new forests. So we thought, as a landscape architect, we should dive into this challenge and think about forest in a new way. So not only as a spatial element in the landscape, which takes up space, but really design with forests in a way that they become a tool to work on different challenges that we have. So forests more as a means to work on these different challenges. For example, water safety, or the way that we produce our food, how we can store CO2, produce wood for buildings, and increase the biodiversity in our landscape. So all the time, the forest is not a goal on itself, but it's a tool to work on the different challenges. That was the way we started this research. And we saw, it's a little bit unclear, but it's interesting that there was a lot more forest. There used to be a lot more forest. And we think with these new challenges we have, like the climate change, biodiversity, need for new building materials, we could grow the amount of forest in the Netherlands. So all the time there's a different reason to have new forests in the Netherlands. Also the previous speakers spoke about it. And we think there's a transition which gives opportunities for new forests. And the way that we work on this project, this research project, which we started, is try to collaborate with all different kinds of organizations. So it's nature organizations, governments, but also, for example, builders and developers. And with them, hopefully, yeah, it starts again. With them, we did very specific locations, design on specific locations, because we had the feeling that there's maybe not a need for a new national plan for forests, but really like specific spots to do test cases with design for new forests. How could we introduce this new forest? I will quickly go through some of these projects. The first one is called Heuvelland, which is a national park in the middle of the Netherlands. It's around 20,000 hectares of forest. It's a very beautiful landscape, but it has a lot of problems related to the water system. To summarize it, there's not enough water infiltrating in the soil and in the edges of the landscape because there's quite intense agricultural use. It's pumped away directly. In this plan, we propose from the existing situation to go to the future, to expand the national park towards the edges and also store this water coming up. And in this landscape, which we transform, there's opportunities for new forests. The benefit of that is also, you see it in this map, that we can have a better zoning for recreational use. It's very intensely used, this national park, too intense. By doubling the national park with forest, we can also zone this recreational use much better. As you can see in the edges of this national park, there's different type of landscape. This landscape is not the same. They have a very different character. And that makes it interesting because we are not introducing forests, erasing the existing landscape and putting forests, but we are including different type of forests in the different types of landscape. So it's a different context. So also different forests that you will see. I got some examples. One is a very intensely used agricultural area on the north side of the national park. This is the existing situation. In the future, you could move to a new agricultural system with forests at the base of it. So it's like a agroforestry type of agriculture. And you can see that forest is not, it is like a linear structure, like a framework of forest. And we look closely at not only the spatial component, but really how could this forest improve this agricultural system. So animals could have shade under the trees or eat from the trees, for example. So it's really about this landscape system. Another example is on the south side of the Heuvelrug, which is famous for its history and estates, which also used to have forests. And we reintroduced this historical hakhout forest, which can be used for the production of furniture or floors or music instruments. So here also the forest is strengthening spatially the landscape, but also it's a productive element. So it's also very useful for this landscape. And you can walk and bike through the landscape. So we zone also this recreational use. This was a project with the province of Utrecht. The second project within the research is done with the developer. It's synchron. They ask us, it's a very different question, and you also see that it will be also very different for us, because they ask us, how can we build forests and get our wood from these forests and build more in wood. So they want to make the transition from to building in wood. So we started by drawing what type of wood and how much wood do you need to build a house. Then we started to see for what do you need for a floor or what do you need for a staircase, which type of trees do you need, and then how much wood do you need for the Netherlands to build 1 million houses, and how much do you need for like a developer? How much houses do you want to build in the next 20, 30 years? How much wood do you need? And then we started improving this flow for wood. So this is the existing flows with a lot of import also of wood, and we optimize this wood cycle for them with a very sustainable way of thinking about forest, and not only having like monofunctional production forest, but sustainable production forest. And it takes too long to go into detail, but we also thought about different locations that they could build their forest, and especially the polluted soil in the Netherlands, which is the right map, offers opportunity to build new forests and clean also the soil there. So you can have different advantages from that. And it results in this transition from now into 20 or 30 years where they can get their own wood from their own forest and be less dependent on imports of wood. The third project was done with WWF, which is a nature organization, and it was the question, how can we think about the river landscape in the Netherlands and add more forests there? And we saw in the first maps that it's quite obvious that this is the forest in the Netherlands, that there's almost no forest in the river areas. And if you look at the history, there used to be more forest in the river area, but because of like the functioning of the river system, the water system is not allowed to plant a tree in the Uitvaart. So what we did is again look very closely at this river system. How does it work? We analyzed it. We saw that there's also some challenges about water safety or about droughts, for example. And we try to put in this forest as a tool to make the way that this landscape works improve it. So it's again like using forest to improve the way this river landscape works. And there's also some examples of forest type. For example, the sponge forest, which is in the upper part of the river, which can store rainwater before it goes into the river. And in the top part, you can see where it is located or where it would be possible to use it. But also the bossen, which are dependent on exfiltration water, are very difficult areas for agriculture. So you could find alternative use for it, which forests which bring more ecology, but also store rainwater for agricultural uses there. And again, different location. So when we work on these case studies, which was with different clients, we tried to get this idea, or we got this idea that all the time with these different forests, there's not one type of forest that you make in the Netherlands. Depending on the context, the question, the challenge you have, you could say there's different goals which you can have with the forest. And I think it was mentioned earlier. You could have a very productive role, for example, building materials, food. There's the climate and maybe the biodiversity, so maybe the ecological role is more in this part, this is more productive. And then they are more about maybe the human layer, so it can be health benefit, recreational use, or experience. So we made this diagram and put all the forests we came up with in this study, which were about 20 different type of forests, like new forests for the Netherlands, which you can use. And you can see all the time they have one or two which really make the focus, and other ones you could also have them. But I think also the message here is most of the time when we work with the clients, they want everything. They want very biodiverse forest, which is very productive, which is also very interesting. So our message and our lessons learned from this research is also that you should choose the priority for the type of forest you make. And it makes it also interesting because you could have like a whole range of different forests for the Netherlands if you do it like this. So we made this bossen book. I have some printed here, I can show you. So you can go through, and there we try to make this sort of catalog for new type of forest in the Netherlands. And we did it in this way so that you can also always see what does this forest do, what is the character of the forest, where can you use it, what would it cost, how would you maintain it, which would be possible partners to make it. So it's like a catalog which you can go through. And it's also to show that there's not one type of forest. So you should really think about a range of different types. So I go through some of them. And you can see the colors, they are related to the diagram. So I think there's 20 forests, but my idea is that in the next 10 or 20 years, as an office, we can add another 20 or 30. So it's like a living document. And all the time, there's an overview. So if you want to do something with food, you should think about these ones. So you can also do it the other way around. We made one manifest. I have it also printed, which is like the lessons learned from the research that we did in the last 3 years. Some things I already mentioned. For example, look closely at the water and soil conditions where you are in the Netherlands. That will also make the forest rooted in these conditions. But for example, also the forest is not a spatial claim only on the landscape, but it should be designed as part of the landscape, strengthen the landscape. So in that way, I like also the discussion, what is the typology of a forest? So I think we are also having a much more hybrid idea about forest. It can be very linear, it can be part of a agricultural system or a water safety system, and I like that idea much more than that's a fixed idea of forest. I think that is more the productive forest. And then we also say, for example, you should always start with the big challenges we have and see how forests can play a role. I won't go through the whole document, it's too long. Then René asked me to think about forests in relation to urbanization or to urban questions, and I added two projects to show a little bit how we work on that. And one is in Lelystad, and the other one is also a design research. So first Lelystad. I don't know if you know Lelystad. It's quite a young city in the Netherlands. You can see in 1960 it was not there yet. And it's designed in a way that by Van Eesteren as a composition of city and landscape together. That makes this image is very interesting. But if you look at the existing situation, it's not really this composition of city and landscape, because the forest that's supposed to be there, like a ring around the city, they are very fragmented. And also owned by different ownership. They are ecologically very poor. And most of the time the city is like has a backside towards this forest. So that if you look at the Strava data, for example, they are almost not used, this forest, also recreational. So that's also not a very good situation. At the same time, there's around 30,000 people living in Lelystad. They want to grow to almost 80,000, so more than double the inhabitants. These are the existing plans, but there will be more demand for housing. And I think it's for Lelystad, but a lot of cities have the same challenge. So we come up with this idea. We work together also with the municipality, with Staatsbosbeheer here, and with the developer. And we came up with this idea: what if we build a house, and for every house we plant 50 trees in Lelystad? What will happen if we keep to that plan in the next 20, 30 years? How could Lelystad develop? And you do it in different steps. So, for example, the first step is 12,500 houses. You make a second step and a third step, and you can see that the houses is growing, but also the forest is growing. And in that way, Lelystad could be part of this bigger metropolitan area, like more in the urban network, but also be part of this ecological network with very important nature areas around. So the city becomes like a part of this green network. So there's two ambitions, we try to combine them. And in that way, the person living in Lelystad has 2 times more forest than the average Dutch person. And what could happen is that the fragmented forest landscape around the city could be developed towards city forest. And you can see that we try to densify the city, because it's quite low density, the city. So we densify the city in the edges, but also we think that the forest offers opportunities for new housing typologies on the edge of the forest or inside the forest. So the landscape in that way forms a base. This is a little bit detailed, but I think here, the forest we see here is not only something to look at or walk through, which is only physically interesting, but it will also help us to store rainwater or increase the biodiversity, have the recreational routes really well connected to the city. So it is these different aspects that we see for this forest. And then in more detail, we work on different typologies which you could have on the forest, like a new city edge, or more like a cluster inside the forest, or more like pioneering with new forest, which is more like an agricultural typology. And with these typologies, we show that this is the existing situation. This is Lelystad now. this is this potential forest, city forest, which is very fragmented now. So in the future, you could say we try to link the city better to the landscape, we densify, and we make a lot more forest. So this was the existing situation, and this could be new. So all the time it's city growing, but also landscape growing. And you can see that we make also this decision to build in quite a high density. So with a low density, like 20 or 30 houses per hectare, you will need a lot more space, and you cannot make it city forest. The same, but then with a different typology on the north side of Lelystad, which is there's almost no forest. We introduce different clusters in the landscape, which are connected, and space for a lot more forest. And this is a little bit bad picture, but it was the plan in the north side of Lelystad was part of the Ministerie van Maak. I don't know if you were there. It was on the IRB with I think 100 plans for housing. So it was quite nice to make the model. But the idea to grow the city and grow the landscape with the dense all the time the dense typologies, and that's we are working on it now with these 3 different clients. And it's very hard because the developer will always tell you that they don't sell and that you have to make low density housing. So we are always in this fight of showing that you need this space to make this good landscape, or else it will just be the next suburban. The last project I want to show is a self-started research. It's called the Landscape Parks. It's a proposal to make new landscape parks in the Netherlands, which could also be forest. Don't have to be forest, but could be forest. We look at the way that the Netherlands has grown. It's very similar to the map of Copenhagen I saw. You could say in 1960, Netherlands was like a landscape with very dense cities lying in the landscape. If you look at it now, especially in the Randstad, it's almost like an inverse. It's like a city with a landscape framed by the city. So what to do if we should build 1 million houses in the Netherlands? Do we continue on the same way that we do now? So in these maps, the red is on the inside, it's older, and the blue is newer. So what we are doing in the last 100 years is putting new rings around our cities with a low density. So if we just put 1 million houses in a new ring around our cities, we think that we are losing the connection between city and landscape. So, and the discussion, we noticed that the discussion was very black and white. So some people saying you should only build inside the city. Other people saying it's much too difficult. You should just build in the agricultural fields. And we have the feeling that it's very useful to think about it in a more nuanced way. And maybe there's new ways of thinking about the city and landscape. So this very black and white discussion, we try to influence with a new concept also. This is the building assignment for the building challenge for 1 million houses in the Netherlands. This is the risk that we see. If you start building this in a new ring around Dutch cities, they will cluster together. You will not be able to bike or walk from the city to the landscape anymore. So I think that there's a very vulnerable development if you just continue in the way that we do, with new rings in low density around the cities. At the same time, this map shows in the city edges the ownership of the city edges. It's much of it is privately owned. There's a lot of developers which already have speculated on this ground position. So you know that if we do nothing, that it will happen. The image that I just showed will happen. It is already happening, you could say. At the same time, we think if you look at the landscape of the Netherlands, then our conclusion was that especially the bigger, stronger landscape, they can contrast or balance against this pressure that you see in the left one. But the landscape around the city, in the city as they are very vulnerable. They will be more fragmented, probably disappear. Here you see some of these bigger landscapes, which are, I think they are protected well, but especially the smaller landscapes around the city, they are very vulnerable. Here you see some study on how long it takes to bike outside this, from the city center to the outside. So in a lot of spots in the Netherlands, it's already 20 to 30 minutes. So if you imagine that there's this new ring of houses, then it will be long. People will not do it anymore. So this is a little bit the situation of this typical city edge. And we think we need a new concept here. So this concept that we introduce is having this fragmented city edge with a lot of infrastructure, a lot of different land use, which has a risk of being completely built, like I showed you. We think that you can build, but build in the edges and leave space for this new typology, the landscape park. So you build, but also you build around this new landscape parks. So what will happen is not the top situation where the city becomes like an endless field of houses and sprawl, and you will not know where to enter the landscape anymore. With this landscape park in between, you can build in a higher density on the edges and have also this connection to the bigger landscape. The only way that you can do that is to build in higher density. So we think about this landscape park as around 1,000 hectares. If you build 10 or 20% of this 1,000 hectares with 80 houses per hectare, then you can have the right image. So you have a lot of space for this landscape park, and you build in higher density in the edge. If you don't do that, like the left one, you will just have the next suburb, and there's no space for landscape. So it's you could say it's an alternative for this approach that we are doing now. So much more built dense, like twice as dense as a Phoenix or normal suburb, and leave space for this landscape. And it also fits the question, like for whom are we building? It's not not the families alone. It's also like different type of households will also fit better in this higher density city. And it's good to mention that we think this landscape park, which is the lower one, offers also a new housing typology. It's like medium density, always connected to these landscape parks. And it's not to replace the other ways of living. So we still think that it's best to build inside the city center, but this could be an additional way of building. And offers also another type of living. This is an image we made, so you can see the contrast between the medium density city edge and really this landscape parks, which is opens up there. And this idea is not new, because it was very strongly inspired on historical examples of very good city edges that we have in the Netherlands. For example, in Utrecht, where I live, you have the city with the Wilhelmina Park, which is a city park. Then you have Amelisweer, which is an estate, or you could say this is a little bit the landscape park that we envision. And then you have the Heuvelrug, which is a national park. So this landscape park typology is between city and landscape. The same could go for Amsterdam, with the Amstelscheg connecting to the Groene Hart. So you have this in the city edges, this landscape park typology, which connects the city to the bigger landscapes. So to summarize again, what do we do with this concept is improve this connection between city and landscape for biking, for walking, for skating. So it offers the gate to bigger landscapes. We improve the landscape, like we strengthen the quality of the landscape, the spatial quality of the landscape. And this landscape is not only nice to look at, but it's also improving the way that the city functions. So it will clean your water. It will provide you with wood for building. It will bring you energy or food. So it's this green lung for the city. I will come back to that. And how do you build in these edges? We look closely at locations that are close to public transport nodes. So you can densify around them and then have these new city edges there. So it's not all the city edges. They can also be related to areas that need to be transformed, like post-war neighborhoods. And you need, because the scale is bigger than most of the time it goes through more municipalities, for example. So you need to collaborate. It's most of the time a bigger city, 2 or 3 villages working together on this plan. So it's also scaling up a little bit this type of developments, not only 200 houses, but it's 1,000 hectares and 10,000 houses. So it's also a scale thing that we introduced. We propose to make 15 of these landscape parks in the Netherlands on different locations, and we look closely at the opportunities, like the good conditions for this concept. So it doesn't fit in every city edge, but it fits in the locations where there's a risk for fragmentation. It's very well linked to public transport, and there's landscape challenges. So there can be more, but these are the 15 that we work on. You could say that they are like a family of landscape parks, and as you can see, the scale is similar, but the way that we think about them, like the landscape, they are different. Some are very forestry, other ones they are new wetlands, other ones they are more agricultural or Arcadian landscapes. But it's a family and it's a new typology we introduced. In the graphic we show what is the main challenges and profile of the landscape park. This landscape park, like I explained, we see it as a green lung in this city edge. So it will provide you clean water, wood, it can store rainwater, it can bring you energy, food. So it has this recreational use, but also very much this, we call it like a landscape machine almost for the city, or a green lung for the city. And that it makes it interesting also towards the forest. And I think also the question that Noel asked, should it always be forest? In this concept, we look very closely at, for example, these circles, they are the location of the landscape parks. Some of them, they offer a lot of opportunities within making the water system more sustainable. So storing rainwater in different locations, or working with the salt exfiltration water, which is coming up, or bodemdaling, subsidence. So some of them, they pop up in this water system. Other ones of these landscape parks, they are very important in the food system because they are very well positioned in very productive food landscape, and could be a connection between that and the city. Other ones, they are the missing link in our nature network for the Netherlands. So you can give them the profile that they are these missing connections. So some examples, this is one at near Amsterdam and Diemen, which has a very strong profile in storing rainwater, because in this bigger map, it offers the opportunity to do that. Just go through that. And this could be the image. So this landscape park, you see this new city edge, but also the appearance of this landscape park can change according to the position and the opportunities that are there. But the principle is always, the design principle is always the same. Another one near Tilburg, which is located between Tilburg and different villages, which has a very high risk of being fragmented. We introduced the scale of this landscape park, connecting all villages, having an address on this landscape park. And here it has a much more agricultural feeling to it, and more this Arcadian landscape. And the last one is in south part of Nijmegen, which is already a forest area, but quite fragmented. Nijmegen has a building challenges, also Malden wants to build. So we introduced this landscape park between Nijmegen and Malden, which could be a new city forest. And then, of course, delivering the wood, having this recreational use, but also having new city edges on the forest. This could be an image of it. So all the time, this forest has different uses for that. So this typology of the landscape park can change very much in the appearance. This is one of the last slides. I wanted to show you how we work on the way that it could work. So we also work with like a financial office, which help us calculating if it would be possible. And the way that we do it is you have different financial sources, and one of them is also that if this city grows and you can build in high density, a part of that will always flow to like a park fund, which will invest it into the park. But that's a very short summary. It was a long study on how to make it possible. But the idea that you build a city and that this park can grow with it, that is the most important part. So I think from a urban forestry point of view, I think this way of thinking that you can have new city edges in like medium density and build landscapes with that or forests with that, I think that is interesting thing for this team. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerwin. I told you he would give all the answers, right? So I don't think there are any more questions. We just do this, right? And we're sort of that. I'm sure there are lots of questions and comments for this very interesting kaleidoscope of ideas and scales. Saskia.
Thanks. I really liked what you said in the beginning about these forests. They shouldn't be claim on space. They should have different relations with the landscape. But you're also saying these can only exist if we put very strict boundaries to the city. They should be high density because if they're low density, they take up too much space. We cannot do this. So if you're saying they should not be a claim on space, isn't that then also possible that they could exist as a layer at the same time with, for example, low density urbanization, so that they take in the same space? Because now you make a very clear decision. This part is the city and this part is the forest.
Yeah, does it work? No.
Hold it.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
That's free. I think that's the.
This one. Yes. Yeah. It's a good question. I think you could do it in lower density and mix it more. The examples were showed also, I think. But I think the business model works with a higher density because you have more houses on less space and you have more space to make the landscape. If you build less houses, then you cannot earn enough money to make the landscape. So it will be, I think it will be a different concept. So I think we need, in this concept, we need to double the density to have the money to make these parks. So I'm afraid that if you go to lower density, there's no money left to build the landscape.
Yeah, but you say lower density means it takes up more space.
Yeah.
But if you say that low density is also the space taken up by the forest, then it's not. So, for example, if you would say every house should have 3 trees in its garden and 6 trees on the house on the street, something like that. So then the low density housing would be at the same time a form of urban forest, which is totally different than this. But so if you say low density housing means it takes up more space because there's nothing else in that same space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I understand what you mean. It's like what René started with, showing that there's a lot of forest inside cities. Yeah, it could be interesting. I think there's more to this scheme because it's also having more density. It's more effective also from a mobility point of view. So in the end, you will make, in the left part, you will make a car city. That is also what I see in the examples with the lower density, eating the landscape, going with your car. So I think there's more to it than the density only. Yeah. But I like your idea mixing city and forest. Yeah.
Yeah, because nowadays we all think of I mean that's the only way we can draw it. It's either green or it's white in this case, which is built up areas. So we always think, okay, this patch is forest patch and this patch is city patch.
How could your concept be different than the Phoenix, for example, which was also an idea of having landscape and housing together? And in the end, the result is not really that it's forest. I don't go there to walk on Sunday.
No, indeed. So it needs new thinking models, like you show here.
Yeah.
That it's because in the Phoenix
nobody defines what the forest component should be. We define what the housing component should be, what the car component should be, but not if you would think of it as forest urbanism, then you would also have to think about the forest component.
Yeah.
And then it might become quality.
Thanks. This is an interesting point. I think we just maybe pick that up a bit later again, but another one of them.
Yeah, hi, thank you for the lecture. I was wondering, because the type of forest or park you show are attractive for people like us, but maybe not for everyone. So how do you attract people who usually wouldn't go into this landscape when you are not having a landscape also in the city? If you know.
You mean, if I understand well, why there is this diversity in this scheme? Like, why do we make this landscape like drawn here?
Like the eye level pictures that you show, like are there also, for example, corridors leading up to this big landscape that the people from within the city are attracted towards the?
Yeah, I didn't mention that maybe that's strong, but I think we see this scheme maybe explains it the best. So these are the historical examples, but all the landscape parks that we propose, they are always this link between city and bigger landscape in ecology, but also for recreational use. So if we see it really as not an island, but really part of this landscape. So it's similar to this. You could say the green fingers of Copenhagen, or maybe the Schettenplan in Amsterdam. They have this same role. Does that answer your question?
I'm just going to the front, but might come back to that looking at the time. Which of you definitely messed up? Probably up a bit higher.
Well, thank you, Gerwin. It's really inspiring to see all your work. But I have, especially because it's really like showing the interdisciplinary nature of what you do. So you are not only working as from an ecological point of view, but also from a social point of view, from a forestry, etc., etc. So it really points to the integrative capacity of landscape architecture, which I really like, of course. But yeah, since there are many students in the room, is there something you learned from your practical studies in a way to give our future generation a study where they should focus on what kind of skills they need to develop in order to be able to address these pressing issues for the future?
That's a difficult question.
But from your experience, what really makes the difference?
To work on these different challenges within the office unit. Because it's not only ecology, I mean, it's also.
Can we look at forest urbanism?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have a lot of discussion. I like to get your experts as well, but
Okay.
Maybe it answers a little bit because I think it looks like that we are doing everything, but we try in the office. We try, for example, this forest research. We started 3 years ago because we saw this question, nobody picking it up. Then we try to be proactively doing that. So that is almost like a research line in the office. You could say this landscape park coming from this idea of 1 million houses in the landscape is also a research line. So I think we're not doing everything. We're only 25.
No, but what I meant is, of course, let me rephrase the question. So you use the forest as a vehicle to also address many other issues which are really important in the spatial development of the Netherlands. So then the question is, what kind of skills or interest should future professionals develop in order to work in similar ways, to really make a difference?
Yeah, maybe it has something to do with this. I would say design research. Maybe it's a design research way of thinking or working. So it's not directly wanting to go to the design, but in the end also coming up with spatial solutions, but doing it from a design research way of working. So we start with this open question, not knowing the answer, but in the end we will do spatial proposals. So there's this all the time this balance between not only doing research and making a nice written report, and also not making a design which doesn't answer to bigger questions. So I think maybe that is a little bit the combination what we try to do in the office. I hope
so maybe to just follow up briefly on this. What I think is very interesting is that you take the forest as a kind of the horse of Troy. Because in a way, from when you would take water as the theme, I think in the end you will also address similar issues, but then you have a different starting. So my question is more: is it more the ability to adapt as a landscape architecture in the realm of what the challenges are, and then to pick, let's say, the right team in order to address them?
Yeah, maybe.
Or is it more like you say, okay, forest is the team to elaborate in the upcoming years?
I like your analysis that we start with one topic almost, and later in the process we get also water safety, we get also ecology, we get also food, so we can load the idea or the concept with these different elements. But if you start with these 20 challenges at once, I think you will not. It's a different way for you.
Yeah, and I think it's very.
Sorry, I'm going to save you there. I'd like to finish by asking the four guests, which I've asked along, to just comment. I've asked even from someone from ecology, landscape architecture, governance, and from urbanism to maybe sort of reflect in a big way what forest urbanism might be and some of the, let's say, principles which might come out of it. I'm going to start with the ecologist, our ecologist, Nick.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a very interesting lineup of speakers, and I think what has been shown covers a lot already. There's one big thing, and especially your presentation, which what do we plan for? So if you plant a tree, you say, well, when the tree is planters dead, they say it's the same as these 1 billion houses, and yet you see loads of houses being planned in the west of the Netherlands. I mean, that's 200 billion euros being spent in a system where we think, what is happening with climate change? Shouldn't we invest in more floating, poles, etc.? So, questions, I think from this day onwards, we should be much more looking forward to this climate adaptiveness of our housing. But what does that mean for our forest structures in the west? Do we introduce Rabattenbossen, which is basically trees and forests on these higher grounds, or how do we deal with that with the green structure? Because obviously we're not just leaving it in this part of the country, but it's still a big question mark in this whole discussion. Let's say not the elephant in the room, but a herd of elephants in the room.
Thank you. Leo. Where is Leo?
Here?
Yes. The other end of the room. Leo, it's not working. Alex Stedelkundig, urban designer, urban planner from the PAP.
Yes. Well, I think one of the reasons I may be here because I was involved in a graduation project together with René Hartmeijer, and there the topic was very central that Saskia just brought to the fore, that we are used to think in categories of red and green, and I think the very interesting thought experiment that came out of this project that is also, I think, very interesting to think of as professionals is how can we, in how we approach urbanism, and if we take this concept of urban forestry serious, how can we do away with this antagonism between red and green and see and come to new items in the legends of our urban maps? Because there you would not then have residential zones and you would not have forests, but you would have different categories. And I think that was an interesting experiment, which in Leah's case also led to maps that looked completely different than the kind of maps that we were used to. because you would not be able to recognize what was city or what was forest, but it was a collection of spatial types that included both. And where trees, like buildings, can be seen as spatial objects that perform different services. A house is a habitation for humans, just like a tree is a habitation for other species. So there are multiple ways of rethinking the urban map if you take the concept of urban forestry serious. I thought that was super interesting and I also highly relevant. So this is what I would invite also other students to think about.
Thank you very much, Leo. And Bart, no, that was right there. Bart, can you just quickly introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you for the invitation. It was very interesting to hear about all this. I'm not a landscape architect or invited because I have experience in local government implementing this kind of plans, and I also support local governments in the province of South Holland creating forests, which is not easy, by the way, because in the we just we turned forest into.
It'll just take a moment, it'll just pick up again. No. We're a technical university and we never get the technicals right. I don't know why they don't like us.
In the former decade, just turned forest into agricultural land or cities. So and now we ask the province and the local authorities to create forest, which is very difficult, and that they don't know how to get that straight, to get the governments straight. And it's also a financial issue. So it's very important that the government, national government, with the climate program, the province with the they have to fill in the thing the government asked them to reach 37,000 acres of hectares, which is a big job. We see from the presentation that we need to be creative to fill it in, but it's also very important to get the governance and to get the decisions maker in a position to describe plans like this is a brick and from flux as just presented.
Thank you very much. And then I'll finish off with Noel. I can put the cap of the landscape architect and the provincial advisor of spatial quality, right?
Is it enough when I speak up loud without microphone? Yeah, so I'm a landscape architect researcher and I advise the province of South Holland in political issues about space. And I was contemplating this afternoon if this concept of forest urbanism helps me in my communication with the South Holland politics. I'm not sure about it, and I think that is because I'm looking from a very big scale, on which I would prefer something like the green metropolis or whatever. And this forest is a bit of a confusing condition. However, I try to think in what way could whatever forest urbanism is help me. And during the afternoon, because of the beautiful lectures, I formulated 5 challenges for you, Renee. And if you can give them back, I'm very happy. The first is South Holland needs forest. And then we speak about real forest. So the question, could we design 1 or 2 or 3 forests of about 500 or 1,000 hectares that structure the metropolis? That could be one answer, I think, coming from this perspective. The second is the South Holland landscape is extremely fragmented, and then it comes to the Gerwin lecture. How can we build links between the dense city and outside? And how can we preserve the remaining fragments of open space between cities. If some sort of forest condition, or even meadow or water could help that, you will be very helped. So linking and preserving. And the third is, which was Saskia speaking about, if there is something like forest as a breeding condition, so creating first a forest and then build, well, let's remind us, we need 200,000 new houses. So that is a big amount of, but let's say we make 3 built forests at specific places in South Holland. Then I have one comment which relates to the question of Saskia, that for me, I think what is extremely important is speaking about forest in South Holland is accessibility. Because the landscape of South Holland is extremely not accessible. So I would be on the line of Gerwin in thinking if we have high density and a big forest, then the accessibility is more guaranteed than low density all mixed. But that's maybe an opinion and perhaps it's something to look for. Then, so that accessibility was the fourth challenge. Design forests so that the landscape will be more accessible, as we have 4 million people who want to go out on a sunny day. And then the last challenge is we have an extremely vulnerable landscape in future climate problems. So if some sort of forest, and I think mostly very wet forest or even no forest at swamp, can help us to be robust. That's the Copenhagen Island problem, in fact. That would be very important. So these are for me 5 perspectives in which or actual forest or some sort of spatial forest condition would help us in solving really big problems. So Renee, thank you. I'm making it here. Can I get the answers?
We'll deliver as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. I'm aware of the time. We have another group here, Popular, they're waiting out to take the space over. It's a popular place, location. We do, though, have the space behind, Urla 2, which also has some drinks. We can continue these discussions. I'm sure there's more questions, etc. You can ask all of our speakers, who I hope will remain and share a drink discussion. Thank you again very much for these wonderful presentations. This slide is great. Thank you all for coming. And I'd like to give everyone a round of applause, yourself as well, especially our speakers.